So I previously spoke earlier this semester on the subject I'm going to talk about tonight, where I suffered, and it's where I was kicked off the hockey team at the end of last season without any explanation. My world was pretty much shaken up and turned upside down during a time where my character was being called into question because of people I associated with, being my roommate Corey, and his beliefs and what he did not like, what our coaching system or our coaching staff was doing. Um, was passed on because of our tight friendship. They thought that I believed in the same things. Therefore, we were bunched in together and I was removed off the team. So I had to willingly accept punishment for transgressions and ideals that I hadn't committed or I hadn't done anything wrong. Where there were some parallels to the suffering servant, because the servant is beaten, whipped, spit on, faces many trials and tribulations, but never complains. So I was faced with many difficult decisions because my immediate future was very uncertain. At the beginning of this entire ordeal, I felt that I was all alone in a situation where I was completely screwed and no one else was really stepping up to help me or say anything to get me back on the team. But during this, I never blamed God for any of these things that were happening to me. And as time passed, I realized I had to make peace for the situation for what it was. I was able to then forgive all the people that had said negative things about me to my coaches that had gotten me in this position, or people who didn't step up and help me. I suffered because I loved hockey so much, and I had given so much of the game over the years. I played since I was 3 years old, and I'm now 23, so 20 years now at college playing hockey. That was what hurt me the most, but I realized through this that now that I'm back on the team, that I need to appreciate my last 2 years of hockey because of how much I've given to the game and love it, and I have the opportunity to play it again. I also have learned that the value of getting strength and leaning on others. During this time, I learned to lean on my parents, my girlfriend, and God at this time, both praying, going to church, calling my parents, calling my girlfriend, just hearing words of affirmation, telling me that I was a good person, that they believed in me, were things that really helped me along and gave me strength in a time where I felt weak, or I felt that I didn't have the gas on my own to continue on. Um, so, shifting gears, I think here in the United States, we're far more fortunate because we don't deal with suffering on a more massive scale as places such as third world countries dealing with things like starvation, drought, political unrest, etc. So, I think the root causes of suffering and pain in the world um, are things that, after the fall by Adam and Eve that were created, nothing in life or the world is as good as it could have been, and now pain, suffering, and death have been introduced in the world. So God goes through his plan of redemption by involving Jesus as his suffering servant to take on the iniquity of all man's sins. So through redemption, we realize that we can achieve glory and be at home with God in heaven eventually by doing the right thing and living out a righteous life. Through redemption, God is working within humanity to reverse the effects of the fall, and we recognize there is still hope because God has initiated this process in the world for us. Hope can be inspired from person to person or in large a group depending on the circumstance and the situation. Hope comes down to the belief that no matter what, God is by your side and that he will love you and protect your eternal soul no matter what worldly pain or obstacle you might face. Amish Grace is a movie we watched about a shooting that happened in Pennsylvania a few years back, where a shooter who was mad at God about his daughter dying went into an Amish school and killed a bunch of girls um, because he wanted to get back at God and he wanted to hurt God. The Amish, they don't believe, they didn't want to hate this man. They ended up forgiving this man, his wife, because they realize that God will take care of all their punishments, and if they hold on to this hatred, that it will only hurt them and it will make them hurt longer and not be able to forgive the daughters. There was even a quote about a woman who couldn't let go of the shooter because he killed her daughter. She heard her daughter say that she would pray for the shooter before he killed her as she went to heaven, so she realized if her daughter could forgive the man who was going to kill her, her daughter had the strength. The woman had to forgive Mrs. Graber had to forgive the shooter who eventually killed her daughter. So you can find hope in any situation. People having strength in others. It's everyday life. People going the extra mile when there's just um, no chance of gaining. But all right, number 3. Given the aspects of the course, so according to Father Robert Barron, redemptive suffering is suffering that is unjust, but when a person or people enduring accept the situation, and the result leads to redemptive power. Further explaining redemptive suffering, it is critical to point out that the suffering must not come from one's own wrongdoing or sin. Father Barron's outlook of redemptive suffering falls very closely to what Jesus experienced actually in the suffering servant by having to take on all of humanity's sins, and then being persecuted on the cross and executed by the Romans for trying to spread the word of God and healing others. So communal suffering, not healing, that we saw taken on by leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi made headway for massive civil rights movements in both respective countries of the United States and India. India with the caste system, and then again civil rights for the United States, which made the world a better place. So through them suffering, people getting murdered, beaten, for simple things we take for granted, they made everything what we have today easily available, readily available, that was something that was a privilege or was against the law back then. So my value of individual suffering has changed because I'm trying to find a lesson to be learned in each mistake I made or hardship I end up in. So I've gained a lot of value, maturity, and substance from the situation I've went through as a person in the last year with my being removed from the hockey team. As an adult, I realized I would have to grow up if I wasn't playing hockey anymore and just go to school, and I was fine with that. I knew I had to make a turn and a change in my life, and I was ready to accept that. And I've been given the opportunity to play hockey again, which is great and I'm excited about. But I've also gained that adult perspective, which I'm glad I wouldn't have really seen for another couple of years if I didn't get kicked off the hockey team and have to make that realization of I might have to go to the real world soon. And so if I had to say which is more of a gift, redemptive or communal suffering, in terms of the world and the overall gift, I would have to say things like communal suffering because, for example, Martin Luther King, what they did or what he did with the civil rights movement, like I just said, with things such as sit-ins and protests and march and the bus boycotts, they got rights for people of color to, again, like ride the bus, go to a restaurant, use a drinking fountain, use a bathroom that was integrated instead of having separate bathrooms or having to get their food out back. Something that we see as crazy today or we would not see as right, but yet he fought for, and now people have that ability to go and do that and live their lives freely. So I see that more as a gift, and it's added more value and substance to the world. Thank you.